Hi, folks. Welcome back to the Inside Line F1 podcast. And this episode, well, I know you've read the title, right? And you know what this episode is going to be about. But seriously, think about it. On this show, we've had racing drivers, we've had commentators, we've had journalists and experts and broadcasters. But this today is genuinely going to be such a unique question such a unique interview, actually. You could see the excitement on my face because I'm already messing up my words. It's so exciting for me. I can barely think straight. But this, folks, is going to be one of the most awaited episodes for me and Kunal personally. And what do you reckon, Kunal? How much time have you been prepping for this one? Because the questions have just been bobbling in my mind for the last few days.
Thank you, Samuel. And yes, I've been prepping for this since September last year, since that was the first time we actually made contact with AWS. And it gives me immense pleasure to introduce Priya Ponnapalli on the show. She's the Machine Solutions Lab lead at AWS, but that's like the title. The more inspiring part is that in a male-dominated world of Formula One, there's a female who's heading a team of machines and a lot of other very intelligent humans that are working to bring, artificial intelligence and machine learning to sort of make the sport of Formula One better. Now, if you're like me, these terms are like those buzzwords everybody uses just to claim that they're smart. But here we have Priya, who genuinely knows what machine learning and AI does in the world of Formula One and what AWS specifically does to enhance and elevate our experience. So Priya, thank you so much for joining us on a Monday morning. It's great to have you on our show, and I'm pretty sure there are lots of exciting technical questions which we're going to ask, which probably answers of which we don't really understand too much of.
Kunal and Samuel, thank you. It's a pleasure to be on here.
Great stuff. And Priya, just the first thing I have to ask you, AWS and Formula One, who would have thought initially? Now that it's happened, it kind of seems like a match made in heaven, right? With so much data to explore, so many big questions to answer in terms of the live broadcast, the cars, and so much else. But just how did it go about? And were you at the project from the very beginning? Because it's such a big thing to lead forward.
So AWS and Formula One have been partnering together since 2018. As you know, Formula One is one of the most data-rich sports. Every car has about 300 sensors. They're generating over 1.1 million data points every second. And Formula One also has over 70 years of historical race data. So we are partnering with Formula One to help them engage their fans better, predict race strategies, and use machine learning and analytics to really drive and fuel innovations in the sport.
That's really crazy. And so, Priya, it really baffles me, right? Because there's so much to work with in this whole thing. How did this whole partnership begin in the first place? It must have been like such a big dream offer that there's so much to work with and so much fun stuff to bring out for fans like us.
Absolutely. Sports is a fantastic medium to bring the benefits of machine learning to life. And we are seeing sports organizations across the world embrace these technologies and bring fans closer to the game, closer to all the decisions that teams and drivers are making. So it's very exciting to partner with the F1 and help them use these advanced cloud technologies like machine learning and cloud computing.
Must be such a crazy project to oversee and work on. But first things first, Priya, I'm actually baffled by this. When you first got the project, when you approached it, and what was your initial reaction like? Because this is just humongous. And you guys have done such a tremendous job with it in so many different applications, which we will discuss, of course.
Yeah, Samuel, our approach to partnering with companies and our customers like Formula One is to solve true business problems. So we brainstorm with our customers, identify what their top challenges are, top opportunities are, and then work backwards from there using technologies like machine learning to build innovative solutions for them. So our approach with Formula One was similar, and we are helping them drive innovations and fuel the sport's digital transformation.
Aha.
I have to interject here. You said solve business challenges, right? The current business challenge in the world of Formula One after the preseason tests have happened is the word porpoising, which is going to become the buzzword from now until the end of the season or before that. Now, I really hope, Priya, that your team of machines actually predicted this phenomena from happening before we humans did in the world of Formula One. So I'm sure we're going to try and find a fix to it. It's going to, it's going to be fixed before we know it. But it's just so exciting to know of all the other technologies that you all have already sort of worked on. And Somil, we can actually take a deep dive on that right away.
You know what? Let's do that. But before that, Priya, why Formula One? Why does AWS have to get with Formula One? What was the whole idea behind this whole partnership? It makes sense for F1 to just understand so much more and do things like building new cars. But what's in it for AWS in this whole thing?
Formula One is some of the highest sanctioned automobile racing by the FIA with the most advanced and fastest cars. It's also an extremely data-rich sport. They've embraced technology and are leaders when it comes to adopting machine learning and high-performance computing. And we're super excited to partner with them to solve these interesting challenges in the sport.
Awesome stuff. And now let's actually talk about the stuff that you've done because there is a lot of good stuff. You know what? Let's start with the most relevant thing right now because, folks, if you're tuning in live, if you listen to this episode, it's round about the time where the first test is done. And there's not a more relevant time to have you on, Priya, because this is a car. I mean, these cars, of course, the regulations that sort of overrule over these cars are the ones that are designed with the help of your team. Firstly, how much time did it take? Because this is a mammoth project. I think F1's most extensive regulation change ever.
Yeah, so Formula One is using AWS high performance computing to run aerodynamic simulations and develop this next generation of car, nearly 70% faster than ever before. And they're creating a car that reduces downforce loss from 50% to 15%. And this drastic reduction gives the pursuing driver a better opportunity of overtaking and giving the fans more wheel-to-wheel action. So the 2022 season will see the next generation vehicle. F1 is also experimenting with machine learning in its simulation process, which will provide the team with new insights into more than 550 million data points generated from over 5,000 single and multi-car simulations.
Wow. That's some properly extensive stuff. So where do you begin with a regulation like this? Because because of course we all know the objective, right? We want to make sure that the aerodynamic wake for the car behind is reduced, but it just basically is a Pandora's box for you guys. There's so many options that you can take from. So just how did you go about with it?
Yeah, as always, we start from the problem and then we work backwards from there. And, in this situation, the computational fluid dynamics project, it tests the aerodynamics of cars while racing and carries out detailed simulations that have resulted in the proposed car design for the 2021 racing season. And it utilizes over 12,000 hours of compute time using over 1,150 compute cores to run transient simulations. So using AWS, Formula One was able to reduce the average simulation time by over 70%, from 60 hours down to 18 hours.
Wow. Wow, that is ridiculous. It seriously is. That is such great efficiency. And it just makes me wonder, with such a big project, with so much to work on, and the way you guys have made it so efficient, those first steps must have been crazy. And so it just baffles me, right? When you've got such a big target and you know how you've got to make it more efficient, just finding the right route. And you mentioned how much time it took. Just how frustrating was this whole project? And how much brainstorming did it take for your team to just find out the regulations now that, of course, we've eventually seen on track now, finally?
Well, it's a partnership, Somil, and with any complex problem, we break it down into various components, and we use what is called Amazon's working backwards philosophy. We decide what the end goal is and then take steps to get there. So in this case, the project took 6 months to refine using Amazon Elastic Compute Cloud or Amazon EC2 C5N instances. And this delivered performance equivalent to that of a supercomputer, costing millions of dollars. And with the insights gained from these simulations, Formula One has been able to specify a car with only 10% downforce loss at the same one car length distance.
And that hopefully will turn out to be so much fun on the track. But what sort of insights are we looking at? Because it's so fascinating, right? Because, of course, for the lay person in us, we tend to look at, oh, there's a lot of CFD work happening. They must be working on something fun. Just what sort of insights are you guys picking out in this whole process?
So let me share a few examples here. So computational fluid dynamics simulates the impact of a liquid or gas on an object, and it requires extensive compute capacity to perform this kind of simulation. However, running HPC clusters on premises requires considerable upfront capital expenditure. It has very lengthy procurement cycles and regular hardware refreshes to avoid, being obsolete. So with virtually unlimited capacity, engineers, and researchers, we can now innovate beyond the limitations of on-premise HPC infrastructure with the power of the AWS cloud. So to complete this CFD work here, Formula One used AWS parallel cluster on Amazon EC2 to run the OpenFOAM CFD framework and Amazon S3 for all the data storage.
Nice, that's good stuff. But Sundaram, one of our listeners, and of course, he is one of our founding members of Bits to Podium. He's got a really fun question around here. And his stats are really amazing. So if you guys have the time, go check him out with F1 Stats Guru. But he's asking, I bet AWS already has a ton of data from the 2022 preseason tests. Could you tell us something that the F1 guys aren't already? There must be something there, because really, there's a lot of data learned in those last 3 days.
Somil, I don't have that info at hand, but I'm happy to circle back and share that with you offline.
Oh man, hopefully someday we get to see it, because it must be so exciting for the teams, right? Finally working and finally getting the cars on track and learning so much from it. Really crazy stuff. And there's one question we've got from Being to Survive on social media. He's asking, just how do you manage all that data? Because it is so much to learn from for a whole team as well. Does it get a bit too confusing that there's a bit too much to work on, perhaps?
Yeah, Formula One uses AWS to collect all this data, analyze it, and visualize it using a very broad and deep functionality of services. And this includes Amazon S3, Amazon Kinesis, as well as Amazon SageMaker to build all the machine learning models that give fans these deep insights. So it is a data-driven sport, and AWS has all the right services to help F1 manage the scale and complexity of data.
Actually, Arman's got a lovely question on the live chat, and thank you for joining in, Arman. And I really want to know your take on this, Priya, because it's so relevant to what you're working on. Will simulations from AI and machine learning be more valuable than real-life tests in the future? And we can see a lot of it happening, because nowadays teams are only testing for 3 days, when earlier on they used to have hundreds of days of testing time. Things are moving in that direction, isn't it?
Yeah, technology is going to help us do these things more efficiently and faster going forward, Somil. And there will be many efficiencies that we will gain. And, it's hard to say what the future holds, but I am very optimistic about, the applications and benefits of ML to solve such challenges.
So how do you just make it as lifelike as possible? Because we've seen over the last few years that the AWS graphics that we see on TV, of course, they are getting a lot more realistic in comparison to what they were previously. So just how do you go about with it? Especially the time model stuff, which earlier on was a bit erratic, but now we are getting a lot more realistic stuff. Just how do you go about it?
Yeah, it's a partnership between Formula One subject matter experts, scientists, AWS machine learning experts, teams of broadcasters. So it takes many cross-functional stakeholders partnering together to bring these stats to life, and often starts with a brainstorming session that we call a discovery workshop. We talk about what would be most exciting for fans, and what kind of data would be necessary to make that possible. We then work backwards from there, explore different machine learning modeling approaches until we meet the right success metrics and have these performance models. And then, of course, partner with teams of engineers and broadcasters to bring these live to, in the form of the F1 insights that we see during live broadcasts.
Well, you mentioned these key stakeholders, but there's one big stakeholder of F1 that's not involved in it, the teams. The teams don't share their data. And is that a crucial missing factor? Does it impact your progress as much? Because usually they are the ones with the most relevant and most real-time data in comparison to all the others.
So Formula One has a lot of data, right? I've mentioned the 300 sensors on each car and the 1.1 million data points every second, combined with over 70 years of historical race data. So this is a lot of data, and it's very powerful, very valuable in generating all these exciting F1 insights. And we've generated over 18 such F1 insights so far. We're also working with Ferrari, the team. And, while we work with F1 as a whole, Ferrari is using AWS's advanced analytics, machine learning, our compute, storage, and database capabilities to rapidly achieve insights into car design and performance on the road and track.
So we all know who the AWS office is going to be cheering for this year, don't we? That's going to be fun to see how Ferrari end up playing up. But speaking of teams, speaking of how you go about with this whole process, Kunal just had this really amazing question that he asked me yesterday about, well, how much do you reckon of this team is machines and what part of it is human? So just how is this breakdown like? What part of it is human work and how many machines do you have working for you in this case?
We have a team of let me tell you a little bit about my team, the Amazon Machine Learning Solutions Lab. We are a global organization of ML experts, so scientists, engineers, as well as product managers. And we work with some of AWS's customers and help them identify and implement, machine learning solutions to solve their most pressing business challenges as well as opportunities. So with the cloud, with the AWS cloud, we have everything needed to make machine learning successful. We've got storage, we've got compute, we've got all the right algorithms, and we've got all the ML experts to solve these problems and, have real world impact.
Nice, that's good stuff. And this just makes me wonder about Formula One and the whole AWS partnership. At the beginning, of course, we now know that Rob Smedley, Felipe Massa's engineer, is now working as the head of data at Formula One. And I can imagine the partnership between you and your team and with Rob Smedley must be quite strong. And the interesting part is, right, there's a lot of data to work on. And I can imagine Formula One initially being a bit overwhelmed at the prospect of getting so much and getting so many insights from you guys. So how open have they been in this whole process? How receptive have they been to change in this case?
They've been fantastic partners. We work those discovery workshops that I mentioned. There've been a few where we brainstormed with Rob Smedley and his team at London and identified a number of these stats. They bring that subject matter expertise, their deep domain knowledge of Formula One racing, and it's been a tremendous partnership that we're very excited about.
Interesting stuff. And now, one thing I was really excited about when it was announced was the AWS graphics, because knowing things like striking distance, knowing things like tire performance. That was also exciting for me as a fan. Now, I am actually very intrigued by one particular aspect of it, the performance metric, where you see the car performance tracked throughout the season. Now, of course, cars change. We see new front wings, new rear wings, new side pods, and so many things come up. But how many times do you have to change your algorithms to match it? Because, of course, it might be a bit crazy with teams developing their cars so quickly. Just how often do you have to keep up with the algorithm as well?
So this is true for any machine learning model, Somil. It's trained on a certain amount of data. And over time, as that data changes or drifts from the initial distribution, machine learning models can also drift. So it's called model drift. It's something that, one needs to routinely update and, train new models. And that's just the nature and life cycle of machine learning models.
And so how much of it is manual work? Because, of course, machine learning, of course, the name suggests that it learns on itself. But for the switch between 2021 and 2022, was that a lot of work you guys had to put in terms of updating the models for this year?
Yeah, it's you have new data, so it does require machine learning experts to train the models. But there's something called, there are things called continuous integration and continuous development, or CI/CD, pipelines that one puts in place that then make it very easy as new data comes in, retrain models, reevaluate their metrics to make sure that they're as performant as we want them to be, and then redeploy them. And this is a standard practice that's used for all machine learning applications.
So quite simply, the more it goes on for, the better it gets. And is that what we're seeing with all the graphics on TV as well?
Absolutely. This is again, very true for machine learning models in general. There's a ton of data that goes behind them, and it does take a lot of data. As the amount of data becomes more and more representative of what we see in the real world, the models also become more and more accurate. So over time, as we get more data, we do expect models to become more performant and also generalize better. So adapt to new situations that they haven't seen better.
Now, this makes me ask a question about the TV graphics that we had early on, Priya, because a lot of people on the internet, let's just say they were miffed about it. But were you guys confident deep down that, okay, maybe in 6 months, maybe in 8 months, this will get better as we get more data? And that has proven to be the case.
With all these machine learning models, Somil, they are trained on all the historical data that we have. We construct the training set, the test sets, the validation sets as robustly as possible. And these models do get better over time as more and more data is available.
Interesting stuff. Now, I want to know about the future, because with you guys, there's so much always in the pipeline. Kunal and I were just discussing this early on today, just thinking what more could be done. We've already read about potentially helping racetracks design their own layouts, because, of course, understanding what could be the better general circuit design for better racing. We've already had driver predictor models, discussions about understanding how drivers are pushing on the car as well. What next? What's in the pipeline? This is all stuff that we just couldn't even have dreamed about 10 years ago.
Yeah, who would have thought that machine learning would be helping us, improve player health and safety, design faster cars, and solve all these interesting challenges. So it's hard to say what the future holds, but I am very optimistic about how ML will solve many complex and important challenges. And, as always, we will work with our customers and help them innovate, and solve their biggest opportunities and challenges.
Interesting. Quick question from Sundaram. AWS gave some insights on the fastest driver of all time in mid-2020. And
That was a fantastic partnership where for the very first time we used machine learning and data to answer a very subjective question in an objective manner for the first time, which is who might be the fastest driver ever.
Yeah, and that was really interesting. And it makes me wonder about other sports because clearly there is a lot to take from there as well. Was there anything that you picked up from other sports that AWS works on as well? Were there any learnings, or is Formula One just a bit too peculiar in comparison to all those other ones?
I think there are a lot of common problems that we're solving across sports. And as I've mentioned, sports organizations are embracing these technologies to better engage their fans. We have a new generation of fans that, consume a lot of data, want many interesting insights, and we want to bring them closer to the game, both before the game, during the game, as well as after the game. So we partner with some of the largest sports organizations in the world, including the NFL, Bundesliga, Swimming Australia, and there are many learnings that we've received that we use in all our customer engagements.
Seriously must help out because at the end of the day, it's human performance that you guys are also tracking. And that's been a very interesting metric that has also been fun to see develop all along the way. And another thing that Shashank has pointed out, right, because there's so many graphics that you guys have developed, but he's pointed out about the pit lane performance graphic. He said that pit lane performance is one of my favorite AWS graphics. Would love to know if we'll see something new this year as well. That was a fun one to watch on TV.
Yeah, we have partnered with Formula One on over 18 different graphics. You've mentioned F1 fastest driver. There was qualifying pace, race strategy, battle forecast, as well as undercut threat and many others. So again, I can't disclose what's in the pipeline, but rest assured there's a lot of excitement coming.
Aha, that sounds like fun. I hope that we get to see all that stuff on the track sometime soon. But I think, Priya, you really are able to read my mind because you straight away are mentioning the exact points that I want to know more about. It's outstanding. Arman has also come up with the very same thing about those quick decision makings, about how you understand the whole thing and maybe help out with everything out. He said some fans feel that the use of ML and AI could potentially take away the thrill and unpredictability of sports. He says, I personally love the graphics, but what are your thoughts on that? And he's also asked about the speed of decision making. Is how useful is ML, in those quick decision making processes?
With all of these sports, it's the athletes, it's the drivers that are the real superstars here, and there's just so much data that we're talking about. It's just hard to process in a very raw format. There's so much telemetry data going from the car to the pit and vice versa. So machine learning and analytics can help us analyze that data and glean insights that help us understand the split-second decision-making a lot better than we would have without these stats.
Now, this just brings us to an amazing point. Abu Dhabi, Michael Massey, he ended up making that rather controversial decision. Well, we don't want to talk about that. We've done enough on that podcast. But FIA have also announced that they are going to have a bit of a VAR kind of system in football where they review and check. Is AWS involved in the decision making at that sense? Or are you guys helping out in the development of that system too?
We are working with many customers on a lot of applications that use computer vision. This includes refereeing, metadata tagging, real-time event detection. So I think machine learning can play a very important role in this kind of decision making.
Fun stuff. Now, one from Arman. It's a bit of a tangent, you could call it that way, because it's not entirely similar to Formula One, but there's maybe a few learnings we can take outside the world of Formula One. He's asked, does AWS use data from F1 or other sports to improve other sectors of machine learning at AWS, maybe such as finance or healthcare? Now, that's something I'm really curious about because we've always, so far in this podcast, we've discussed what's in it for F1, but is there much for AWS to take outside of F1 as well?
I can speak for our customers. We work with customers across all industries, healthcare and life sciences, manufacturing, telecommunications, finance. And when it comes to machine learning, there's a lot of cross-pollination of ideas. There's lots of different data modalities that are common, lots of common problems. So there's a great cross-pollination of ideas. And, since our work with the NFL and Formula One, we've seen many other customers flock to AWS for their machine learning needs.
That's basically all you could ask for, right? It's perfect advertisement in a way, considering how F1's been going so far. But I'm really intrigued about how much more machine learning can do and how much more AI can do in this case. Now, of course, we've all dreaded the prospect of having driverless cars because we love the human aspect of it. But we've seen it happen in the world of esports, in the world of sim racing. Honestly speaking, that must be a realistic factor, right? Maybe we've seen it happen on the road to a certain degree. To what extent do you think it can be done in racing as well? And how soon do you think it can happen? Again, is it a spectacle or not? That's subjective, but just on the objective side of it, do you think it can really happen?
It's hard to say what the future can hold, but as I've mentioned, right, I think machine learning can solve a lot of key challenges for us. And I think we're a little bit away from that futuristic scenario that you've described. We've got a lot of practical, real world problems to solve. And, I'm very excited that as a technology, machine learning has gone from something just being piloted to something that's now being used in production, solving real world problems with impact. There are so many companies that, their entire value proposition is based on machine learning. And I think there are many interesting applications, and it's going to help us solve some of the hardest problems we face, like climate change, cancer, space exploration, renewable energy. So I'm very optimistic.
Likewise, I'm really intrigued to see just what more can machine learning do in this space. And so is Siddharth, who's one of our team members at Pitch to Podium. He's got a lovely question for us on social media. He's asking just how does AWS go about collecting data? Again, we discussed how many data points and sensors we have, but what sort of machine learning algorithms do you use as well? That's what he has in mind.
Let me share an example with the NFL. So the NFL powers Next Gen Stats, which is their solution to collect complex data from the field using AWS. So they have RFID sensors. These are RFID tags in the shoulder pads of the players. There's also a sensor in the ball and at various other points on the field, on the referees. And these sensors are passing real-time location info. So this is X and Y coordinates to broadband receivers every 10th of a second. Again, extremely data rich, and Amazon S3 is being used to store all of this data, and Amazon SageMaker is then being used to train machine learning models that make interesting predictions that can be used in real time during these games. So, there's also video footage that's being collected, and a lot of injury data that's being collected, and all of this data is being combined and analyzed to have positive impacts on various aspects of the sport, like making football safer. So I think there are very many different applications. Different customers have different types of data that they collect. And we have a broad and deep functionality of services that can help manage the scale and complexity of data and make sense of it and, have that impact.
You mentioned so many crazy data points with NFL. It must be even more. It must be amplified with Formula One, which I'm sure must be a dream of anyone working in the field of machine learning, right? To have more data and more control over it. But what's the partnership with F1 been like in terms of the challenges? Has it been a bit of a tricky project to work on? And just what was the hardest part of setting it all up?
I think it's been a fantastic, partnership so far. We've partnered on some very key events, and this includes, transforming the sport, changing how they collect data, how they analyze it, how they visualize it. We've partnered on enhancing fan engagement through all the F1 insights. We've partnered on creating a better racing product by helping them develop the next generation of the car. So if I were to say what the most challenging aspect is, it's always at the onset, the problem and defining the full scope. That I think that's the part where we partner with F1 experts, and then we work backwards from there. But I think it's been a very exciting partnership.
And this just makes me ask one really nerdy question, right? With so much data, with so much potential option available, what was the one thing you would love to do with F1 potentially? Any extreme idea that you have in mind that you can perhaps execute? Maybe that could be something already in the pipeline. Now, I know you wouldn't say that, but still, any extreme idea that perhaps you would love to work on Formula One with all this data that you have in hand?
We want to help them solve true business problems. We want to help them innovate. And that's what we've been focusing on. And that's what you will see more of, in the future.
Can't wait to see that. But Priya, you're really leading the way forward in this whole thing in terms of ML, in terms of managing such an amazing team who's working in such a productive direction. There's so many people who want to know exactly how you got it done. We've got two questions. Firstly, one from Arman, who's here with us live and sending in so many great questions. Thank you so much for joining in, mate. He's asking, as an ambitious student who's in love with the idea of ML and AI, just what does it take to be a part of AWS in the future? And what is a day in the future life of Priya Ponnapalli like as a leader and a pioneer in the future of AI and ML? That's a big one.
Let me take the first question first. I think, to be successful with ML and AI, of course, there's getting up to speed and getting familiar with the ML side of the house and the domain. But it's also really listening to the voice of the customer, identifying what the true problem is, and then working backwards from there, right? That's the Amazonian process. Customer obsession, where we focus on what is the customer problem that we're trying to solve, and then build a solution to that. Day in my life, it's I love what I do. I love working with all our customers and solving real world problems using machine learning. I'm very proud of my team. It's a global organization with scientists, engineers, and product managers. And it just gives us a lot of happiness solving these problems for our customers and partnering with them on some of the most important challenges of our times.
Well, there's actually one similar question that we've got on social media as well from Abdullah Harris, who's also asking, if you move from another career into something like AI and cloud computing, just what should you be aware of? Because it's such a vast field.
I think, the AI space can use a lot of diverse perspectives, and we need all those diverse ideas coming from all the different fields. So my advice would be don't feel that, you are not ready. It's never been easier to learn a new domain, especially coming up to speed. And with ML, there's so many online courses, so much great content. Pull yourself up a chair and, bring your diverse perspectives and experience to this field. We definitely need it.
Absolutely. It'd be fun to see what more stuff we have in hand. But Priya, before we let you go, just one really fun question. Personally, who are you rooting for in 2022? Is it going to be Ferrari?
I look at sports through the lens of data, and I'm not going to. There's no specific team that I'm going to name, but I am a Lewis Hamilton fan. and my family is a huge F1 fan. I've mentioned my 7-year-old now almost. He retrospectively picks which team and drivers he's picking based on who's winning. So I'm sure we'll see more of that in the season. We're super excited for it.
Absolutely. This is going to be such a fun year, and it's so amazing to have you on here, Priya, to just help us understand just what goes into preparing these insights and also the new 2022 car. Seriously amazing stuff. Loved having you on the podcast, Priya. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Kunal and Soman. Pleasure being on here.
Well then, folks, I hope you had a good time listening to this episode as well. I know I did. It was really fascinating diving into everything. And if you did enjoy, you know what to do, right? You know you have to share this podcast, leave a good rating, all that good stuff. Well, thank you for listening. Thank you for watching, and see you on another episode of the Inside Line F1 podcast and Pits to Podium. Bye-bye.